What if I told you? The girl who exposed sabotage at Yale stood her ground against privilege and walked away with the national trophy. Was about to face something even harder. Because after the applause fades, after the spotlight dims, the system doesn't congratulate you. It comes for you. This is the true inspired continuation of Maya Bellamy, the girl from New Orleans who stunned the Ivy League. She thought winning Yale's national debate championship would be the hardest thing she'd ever do. She was wrong. Because now, she's been invited to Yale's elite summer program, and from the moment she walks through those gates, the whispers start again. The sabotage returns. And the stakes? They don't stop at a trophy anymore. This time, it's about policy, global power, and the one thing institutions fear most, a black girl with receipts, and a platform she's no longer afraid to use. If you haven't seen Part 1, pause now and go watch Maya Bellamy, the girl who beat Yale. Because what happens next only makes sense when you know where she started. And hey, if you believe in stories that shake the system, voices that don't wait for permission, and young women who rewrite the rules, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and let's dive into Part 2, because Maya Bellamy didn't come back to prove herself. She came back to change the game. The sun was barely up when Maya Bellamy arrived at Yale's sprawling campus for the summer pre-college program. She wore the same second-hand blazer from the debate competition, now freshly pressed. In one hand, she held a campus map, creased from all the times she'd studied it back home. In the other, a battered leather journal, pages filled with arguments, rebuttals, and dreams she wasn't supposed to have. Today wasn't about trophies. It was about surviving in the lion's den. Yale wasn't impressed by her victory anymore. The fanfare had died down. The applause was over, and what was left was reality. As she approached Branford Hall, where orientation was taking place, she passed students dragging Louis Vuitton luggage and custom Yale duffels. Some were laughing about spring breaks in Europe. Others were scrolling TikToks from their penthouses in Manhattan. Maya paused at the door, adjusted her ponytail, and exhaled slowly. "You've earned this," she whispered to herself. Inside the hall, orientation had already begun. A tall woman with a clipboard looked up as Maya entered. "Name?" she asked curtly. "Maya Bellamy." The woman scanned her list, then gave a tight smile. "Ah, yes, one of the scholarship students." The way she said it, scholarship students like Maya was a charity case, not a competitor. Maya forced a nod and took her seat near the back. A few rows ahead, she spotted Priya Shah, her semi-final opponent from the debate tournament, seated with a small polished group of returning pre-college students. Priya turned, met Maya's eyes for a split second, and then whispered something to the girl beside her. Laughter followed. So it begins, Maya thought. The orientation was led by a faculty member named Dr. Valerie Strauss, who introduced herself as director of the Yale Honors Bridge Initiative. She clicked through a pristine PowerPoint, detailing the rigorous 6-week schedule, Ivy-level seminars, policy labs, weekend internships, and a culminating capstone project. Then she paused on the next slide. "Our summer cohort will also nominate one student," she said, "to represent Yale at the Global Youth Policy Forum in Geneva this fall." A wave of murmurs spread across the room. "This is not a guaranteed spot," she continued. "Only one of you will be chosen, and trust me, competition will be fierce." Maya's heart jumped. Geneva? A chance to speak on the world stage? But then came the twist. "There will be a pre-selection review panel," Dr. Strauss added, "and to ensure academic integrity, We'll also be reevaluating any student previously involved in public controversies." Maya froze. "Wait, what?" She saw Priya smirk again. Then she saw the slide change. "All selections subject to review of student conduct and character history." It was subtle, but loaded. Maya glanced around. A few students were already looking at her, whispering. One boy, 2 rows up, muttered, not so softly, "Didn't she win because the other guy cheated?" Her stomach turned. They weren't just rewriting the rules. They were rewriting her story. By lunchtime, Maya had barely touched her food. She sat alone in the dining hall, pushing a scoop of mashed potatoes around her tray. Her phone buzzed with a message. "Professor Grant. Lunch tomorrow? My office. Bring your journal." Maya blinked. Bring your journal? Was this a warning? A lifeline? She didn't have time to think. Across the hall, Priya stood up and made her way over. She sat across from Maya without invitation. "You know they're not going to let you go to Geneva, right?" Priya said, matter-of-factly. "They're just dangling it to make the program look diverse. But trust me, you've already peaked." Maya looked up. "You sure about that?" Priya tilted her head, smiling. "Let's be honest. You embarrassed Gregory, and that made you look strong, for a minute. But here, this isn't a stage, it's a system. And systems don't forget who they're built for." Then she stood and walked away. Maya clenched her fork tightly, so tight it almost bent in her hand. She looked around the room again, at the laughter, the networks forming, the whispered connections. They had already started shutting the doors. But Maya? She had brought her own keys, and tomorrow she'd walk into Professor Grant's office and begin unlocking something far bigger than any of them expected. Maya knocked gently on the office door. The brass plaque still gleamed. Eleanor Grant, Ph.D. But beyond it stood a woman no one could quite read. "Come in," came the voice from inside. Maya stepped in. Professor Grant didn't look up right away. She was scribbling notes on a thick folder, glasses perched low, breath slow and deliberate, as if the world beyond those pages wasn't worth noticing. Finally, she closed the file. "Sit down." Maya obeyed, spine straight, like she was walking into a job interview. "Did you bring the journal?" Grant asked. Maya nodded and pulled the worn, leather-bound notebook from her bag. Grant held out her hand. "Let me see it." Maya hesitated. This journal was her safe house, her battleground, her soul on paper, but she passed it over. Grant flipped through the pages slowly, and she wasn't just reading the words. She was reading the late-night scribbles, the underlined fury in quotes from bell hooks and Justice Breyer, the scribbled arrows linking arguments to trauma. She was reading the mind of a girl who wasn't just trying to keep up. She was trying to reinvent the game. After a long moment, Grant spoke. "Someone on the Yale Summer Committee is already pushing to disqualify you from Geneva." Maya didn't blink. "Because of what happened with Gregory?" "Because of your volatile temperament, your lack of pedigree, and your media risk," Grant said, tone clinical. "And what do you think?" Maya asked, locking eyes with her. For the first time, Grant looked up. Her expression wasn't angry, not sympathetic either, just evaluative, like Maya was a case study in front of her. "I think you have something this institution can't process. Honesty." A pause. "And if you really want to go to Geneva, I have a way." Maya leaned forward. "I'm listening." "There's a new cross-institutional policy lab forming. Joint project with the UN. Topic: Truth in the Post-Information Age. Yale wants a pre-college cohort to pilot a debate-based proposal model Grant took off her glasses. If you lead the team, design the framework, write the position paper, and survive internal review, Geneva isn't a maybe, it's a guarantee. Maya's voice was tight. And if I fail, then you've just handed them the perfect excuse to bury your name under a rug labeled too risky. There were no smiles, no encouragement, just a battlefield, and Grant had handed Maya a map across the minefield. 2 hours later, Maya sat alone in Sterling Library. A blank team roster sat in front of her. She knew no one would volunteer to join her, so she flipped the script. Instead of approaching the polished debate stars, she looked for the ones like her, the ones left out. She found a coding major from Detroit who never raised his hand but aced every logic quiz. A girl from rural Idaho who always got accidentally left off group projects. A Hmong American student from Fresno who didn't speak perfect English but wrote essays that cut like glass. They were confused when Maya approached them, then curious, then committed. She didn't recruit based on resume strength. She recruited based on systemic blind spots. 3 days later, Maya's team walked into their first strategy session. Across the hall, Priya Shah's team already had matching slideshows, a team logo, even a trending hashtag. "Good luck," Priya said breezily as she passed Maya. Maya just smiled. "I don't need luck. I've got a plan." Priya paused, just for a second, and Maya knew. The real competition had just begun. Yale's Global Policy Lab wasn't on the official curriculum. It was a whisper course, a legacy track, and Maya had just walked into it with a bullseye on her back. The first session took place in room B, 317 of the law school annex. The glass walls let you see everything and everyone. No secrets, no shelter. Maya stepped inside with her new team, an eclectic mix that drew immediate stares. The room was already half full. Priya sat with her sleek 5-member squad, their laptops open, color-coded tabs visible from across the room. They weren't hiding their ambition. They wanted everyone to know they were here to dominate. As Maya's team settled into their corner, whispers began. "Is that the girl from the debate scandal? Didn't she get in because of the whole cheating thing? I thought this was merit-based." Maya said nothing. She just opened her notebook and began outlining her first strategy draft. At 10 o'clock sharp, the door opened. In walked Professor Klein, the faculty advisor for the project. Gray hair, horn-rimmed glasses, and a stare that could turn concrete into mist. He didn't smile, he didn't greet. He just placed a stack of manila folders on the front desk. "This lab is not a sandbox," he began. "You are not here to impress each other or post about it on LinkedIn." His eyes darted to Priya's team. "You are here to develop and defend a policy solution robust enough to be tested by 3 real-world simulations, and then survive a cross-examination round in front of the Yale Global Review Board." He paused. "Most of you will fail." Then he looked directly at Maya. "Some of you are not expected to be here at all." The silence that followed felt like suffocation. But Maya didn't flinch. The first challenge: design a mock policy proposal that protects truth and accountability in the age of deep fakes. Groups had 48 hours to deliver a prototype briefing paper. 5 pages, cited sources, team logic chain, and 1 spoken pitch. Maya's team scattered to the library like a guerrilla unit. They didn't have Polish, but they had hunger. While Priya's team rehearsed in sleek conference rooms, Maya's crew camped out in the underfunded economics building. Duct-taped desks, squeaky chairs, bad Wi-Fi. But in that chaos, something sparked. The coder from Detroit, Kamal, built an algorithm model overnight that flagged manipulated video content using sound wave inconsistencies. The Hmong American student, Leah, drafted a cultural ethics clause on AI responsibility that referenced Southeast Asian disinformation case studies, something none of the elite teams even thought to include. The girl from Idaho, Sadie, stitched together a legal framework using obscure state-level precedents around truth in media legislation. Maya coordinated it all like a conductor. She didn't speak the loudest, she asked the best questions. By hour 46, they had a prototype pitch titled Truth Guard, a decentralized verification network for global media integrity. They were exhausted, underslept, unpolished, but ready. Presentation day, the room was packed, not just with students, but with visiting professors, guest evaluators, and even a local news blogger covering rising voices in Gen Z policy. Priya's team presented first. It was flawless. Infographics, elegantly animated slides, corporate case studies, strategic keywords. The whole room was nodding before they even finished. Then came Maya's group. She stepped to the mic with a printout and no visuals, just conviction. "No system is neutral," she began. "Every policy that fails to account for inequality reinforces it." She laid out their logic, starting with Kamal's code, weaving in Leah's global insights, grounding it in Sadie's legal scaffolding. She cited historical examples of how truth had been manipulated to erase the powerless, then offered a model that didn't depend on centralized gatekeepers, just people, networks, accountability. When she finished, silence, then polite claps. Nothing loud, nothing conclusive. As Maya returned to her seat, she noticed Priya exchanging glances with Professor Klein. Klein's face was unreadable. Later that night, the results dropped. Each team received a score breakdown via email. Maya opened the message on the steps outside Sterling Library. Her hands were shaking. Content depth, 9 out of 10. Innovation, 10 out of 10. Presentation, 6 out of 10. Total score, 25 out of 30. Then she saw the note at the bottom. Impressive originality, but lack of polish hurt the impact. Consider reworking communication strategy moving forward. And then the final line. Status, advancing. She looked up at the dark sky. Her chest rose slowly. She had survived, but barely, and she knew this wasn't over. Priya wasn't done, and neither was the system trying to push her out quietly. The real battle was just getting warmed up. The next morning, Maya walked into the seminar hall and felt it instantly. The air had shifted. Not because of grades or gossip, but because something deeper was moving beneath the surface. She saw the way people turned slightly when she walked by, the way conversations hushed just a second too late, the way one girl, someone Maya had smiled at just yesterday, looked through her like glass. It wasn't paranoia, it was a pattern. By lunch, it had a name. The Whisper Network. It wasn't official. It didn't need to be. Just enough offhand comments, just enough side-eyes, just enough, "Did you hear she only advanced because Professor Grant likes her?" Maya sat alone on a campus bench, chewing on the inside of her cheek. Her group was still intact, but the social isolation was becoming surgical, and it wasn't just whispers anymore. That evening, she opened her laptop to an anonymous email. Subject: Keep playing hero. See what happens. Message: Not everyone's buying your little underdog act. Some of us remember Gregory, some of us know what you did. There was no signature, no trail. But Maya knew exactly what it was, a warning, or a trap. She stared at it for a long moment, then hit delete. She would not flinch. The next day, the second simulation challenge was announced. Prompt: Design a crisis response protocol for combating misinformation during an international emergency. Students had 72 hours to produce a plan, media strategy, and defense document. Maya's group got to work. But halfway through the second day, they hit a wall. Kamal's algorithm started spitting out errors, massive data sets disappearing. Leah's citation database wiped. Sadie's shared drive locked. Something was wrong. They scrambled through folders, checking access logs. Then Kamal paused. "I think we've been hacked." Maya froze. "No one outside our team has the password." "Unless," Kamal said, eyes narrowing. He pulled up a screenshot of an access log. The IP address was familiar. Someone from within the Yale network. They traced it back to someone on Priya's team. Maya clenched her jaw. She knew how this game worked. No proof, no consequence. Even if she took it to the professor, it would become her word against theirs. A familiar feeling twisted in her gut, the weight of being seen as angry the moment she raised her voice. So she didn't go to Klein. She rebuilt. They pulled an all-nighter in the undergrad music hall, because every other building was booked. While Priya's team filmed a flashy policy pitch with green screens and mock press conferences, Maya's team used a chalkboard, 2 borrowed tripods, and a borrowed mic. And somehow, they made it work. Maya stood in front of the lens, hair pulled back, no makeup, no frills, just her voice. She stared straight into the camera and said, "The first casualty of crisis is truth. Our protocol doesn't just protect information. It protects the people forgotten by the systems that failed them." Behind her, Leah held up stats. Sadie outlined case law. Kamal demoed the fixed algorithm. By 5:59 a.m., they submitted with 1 minute to spare. The scores came out the next night. Priya's team, 27 out of 30. Maya's team, 28 out of 30. Shock spread across campus. For the first time, Maya's team beat them. The reaction? Muted. No announcement, no praise. Just another ripple in the whisper current. But behind closed doors, panic. That same evening, Professor Grant called Maya to her office. She didn't smile. She didn't say congratulations. She said, "They're coming for you." Maya blinked. "Who?" Grant leaned forward, voice low. "There's a petition circulating. Some of the other students, they're suggesting you violated collaboration rules, that your team used outside help." Maya's stomach dropped. "That's a lie." "I know," Grant said calmly. "But perception outpaces truth, especially when people feel threatened." Maya looked down. Her hands were trembling. "Why are you telling me this?" Grant met her eyes. "Because this isn't about rules, it's about power, and you're starting to take up too much of it." Later that night, Maya sat alone on the chapel steps. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Kamal. "We're with you, let them try." And below it, a Dropbox link. Inside, a full backup of every edit, every timestamp, every internal message. They had receipts, and for the first time, Maya smiled. They wanted her gone, but she wasn't going anywhere. They didn't call it a trial. Yale called it a peer conduct review. But everyone knew what it really was, an ambush. 3 days after the anonymous petition gained traction, Maya received the email. Subject: Request for appearance, Conduct Review Panel. You are requested to attend a review hearing regarding potential breaches of academic integrity during Simulation Project 2. Your attendance is mandatory. Please prepare a statement and relevant supporting materials. No mention of the accusers, no details, no context. Just a time, a room, and the quiet implication that she was guilty. Maya sat alone outside the boardroom in Lindsley Chittenden Hall, her fingers wrapped tightly around her notebook. Inside that room were 5 members, 2 professors, 2 student reps, and 1 administrator. None of them were from her group. But Maya wasn't afraid of the facts. She was afraid of the framing. Because truth doesn't always win. Sometimes it has to fight. 10 minutes later, they called her in. Professor Strauss, the same woman who'd introduced the Geneva opportunity, sat at the head of the panel. She didn't nod, didn't smile. "Maya Bellamy," she said formally. "Thank you for appearing." Maya nodded once. Then Strauss gestured toward the opposite table. And there she was, Priya Shah, poised, prepared, wearing a navy dress and a look of careful concern. "Maya," Strauss continued, "a formal complaint has been raised suggesting your team may have received unauthorized external assistance, particularly regarding the algorithmic demo in Simulation 2. Maya looked straight at Priya. "So, no one's even trying to pretend this is anonymous anymore?" Priya tilted her head, innocent. "I was just asked to testify about irregularities I observed. This isn't personal." Maya let out a soft laugh. "It never is, until it is." Strauss tapped her pen. "Miss Bellamy, we'd ask that you stick to the facts." Oh, I have facts, Maya thought. And then she brought them out. First, she opened the Dropbox link on a projector screen, each file, each version history, each timestamp showing internal collaboration. Then she handed out a printed log Kamal had created, tracking every IP address and login time. There was no outside help, Maya said, but there was outside interference. Someone tried to delete our files. This is how we recovered them. A flicker of uncertainty passed over one professor's face. Maya pressed on. "You want to talk about academic integrity? Start by asking how our group files were accessed from another team's login credentials." The room fell still. Priya stiffened. But Maya wasn't done. She held up a physical copy of her journal. "This notebook has 6 weeks of planning, including handwritten outlines of every presentation we've given. If anyone wants to cross-reference it, go ahead." Strauss glanced at the panel. "We'll take a short recess." Outside the room, Maya sat on a bench, knees bouncing. 10 minutes, 15. Then the door opened. "Miss Bellamy?" She stood. Strauss looked down at a sheet in her hand. "After reviewing the submitted materials, the panel finds no evidence of misconduct. Your group's submission is cleared and remains eligible for all program opportunities." Maya didn't smile. She simply nodded. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, Priya spoke, too quietly for the panel to hear. "You really think this means you've won?" Maya leaned in, whispering back. "Number. But it means I'm still standing." Word spread fast. Within an hour, the entire program knew what had happened. Some congratulated her. Most stayed silent. But there was one unexpected message in her inbox that night. From Professor Grant. Subject: Momentum. Well handled. The third simulation will be different. More pressure. More eyes. They're waiting for you to stumble again. Make sure they keep waiting. Maya closed the laptop, heart pounding. They thought they could bury her. But she had just made them dig their own hole. They announced it without warning. Professor Klein walked into the seminar hall holding a single sheet of paper. No slideshow, no prep, no email heads up. "The final simulation begins now," he said flatly. "You have 5 days to draft a full-scale national policy framework and defend it before a panel of real-world policymakers." A collective gasp rippled through the room. "No teams," he added. "This one's solo." Dead silence. No teams, no collaboration, no warning. And then he looked straight at Maya. "The topic is trust and governance in the age of algorithmic control." Maya's blood ran cold, because that meant everything they'd built, her group, their synergy, their balance, was gone. Now, it was just her. Later that day, Maya sat in her dorm room, staring at a blank document. Algorithmic control? Where to even start? She thought of Kamal's model, of the deepfake crisis paper, of Leah's case studies, Sadie's frameworks. They were gone now. Not their support, but their voices. She couldn't consult them, not without violating the new solo rule. She opened her notebook and started sketching ideas, but the words wouldn't come. A creeping anxiety began to spread. Not fear of failure, something worse. Fear of being erased, because if she stumbled here, everything they'd said about her would be proven true. The whispers, the doubts, the sabotage, the campaign to wear her down. They didn't need to beat her. They just needed her to crack. By the third day, the program's atmosphere had shifted entirely. Laptops flickered late into the night. Cafes turned into war rooms. And in the middle of it all, Maya worked in silence. Pages of theories, drafts of arguments, but nothing clicked. Until she logged into the shared archive to find a required dataset, and it was missing. Confused, she checked her own files. Gone, all of them, every draft, every outline, every footnote. Gone. She raced through folders, backup drives, even temporary files. Nothing. Her hands started shaking. Someone had deleted everything, again. But this time it wasn't a team project. This time, there were no witnesses. No Kamal to track access logs. No Sadie to help reconstruct. Just Maya. And a blank screen. She could have gone to Professor Klein, reported the breach, but something told her it wouldn't matter. The deadline was 48 hours away. No one would care about excuses, just execution. So she did the only thing she could. She started over. Maya went to the most secluded part of campus, the library's forgotten basement archive. Dusty, dimly lit, mostly empty. And she built her policy framework from scratch, by hand. She didn't just write. She bled onto those pages. She crafted a policy called the Human Code Doctrine, a legislative proposal for AI transparency, ethical oversight boards, and community-owned algorithmic accountability. It was bold, maybe too bold, but it was real, and it was hers. Submission day arrived. Maya turned in her 16-page policy draft at 6:58 a.m., 2 minutes before the cutoff. She hadn't slept. Her hand was cramping from handwriting half of it before transcribing. Her laptop still hadn't recovered. But it was done, or so she thought. At 2:14 p.m., she received a message from the program admin. Subject, technical submission error. Dear Maya, we received your draft, but the system shows a corrupted file. Please be advised this will affect your evaluation unless a viable version is confirmed. Her breath caught. She sprinted across campus to the admin office. I submitted it. I have the confirmation timestamp. I even emailed a copy to myself. The admin shrugged. If it's corrupted, it's corrupted. Maya's jaw clenched. I have a physical copy, she said. I wrote the entire thing in longhand first. I can resubmit that. The admin hesitated, then, bring it. We'll note it, but I can't guarantee the judges will accept a handwritten version. Maya ran. Back to the basement. Back to the only place where the system hadn't touched her work. She returned with the pages bound in a simple folder. No polish, no formatting, just ink, heart, and fury. She handed it in. Then she exhaled, for the first time in 72 hours. That night, she got a text. Professor Grant, I heard what happened. They're running out of ways to stop you. And then, get ready. Tomorrow's evaluation isn't just about ideas. It's public. Maya stared at her phone. Tomorrow, she'd defend the Human Code Doctrine in front of experts, scholars, and reporters. On stage. Alone. They had taken her files. They had erased her drafts. They had corrupted her submission. But they hadn't stopped her voice. And tomorrow, they'd hear every word. Yale's Horchow Auditorium was packed, not just with students, but with deans, journalists, tech lawyers, even a few venture capital reps invited to observe rising youth voices on algorithmic policy. But Maya didn't care who was watching, because for the first time in her life she wasn't speaking to impress anyone. She was speaking to survive. Each student had 10 minutes to present their final simulation before a panel of 5 judges, 2 faculty members, 1 UN policy advisor, 1 former tech executive, and a lawyer from the ACLU. Maya was scheduled last. Of course. She stood in the wings as the student before her wrapped up a slick, jargon-filled speech about AI trust indices and market-driven transparency. The judges offered polite nods. Then her name was called. Maya stepped into the spotlight. She wore her usual, a plain navy shirt, scuffed shoes, no makeup, just her. She set the thin folder containing her handwritten Human Code Doctrine on the podium. No slideshow, no digital backup. They'd tried to wipe her voice from the record, so she would give it to them raw. "Good afternoon," Maya began, voice calm but steady. "My policy proposal is not the most polished, not the most technical, but I'd argue it's the most human." She let the silence hang. Then she launched in. She outlined her 3-tier framework for AI transparency legislation, a federal oversight board of technologists, ethicists, and civil rights historians, a public disclosure mandate for algorithm training data and bias audits, a community algorithm review system, giving citizens the right to audit tools that shape hiring, housing, sentencing, and access to credit. The audience began leaning in. She continued. She told them about the deletion, the sabotage, the corrupted file. She didn't name names, but her voice didn't tremble when she said, "If the systems we build can be hijacked to silence or erase, they're not just broken. They're dangerous." Then she paused, looked directly at the judges. "We are no longer asking whether algorithms can be trusted. We're asking whether we, ordinary people, still have a voice in the world they're building." A hush fell over the auditorium. Maya took a breath and delivered the final line of her presentation. "The Human Code Doctrine doesn't ask permission from tech. It demands protection from it." Silence. Then, applause. Not polite, not obligatory, real. Reluctant in some corners, but building, rolling, echoing off marble walls. Even the UN advisor cracked a smile. The ACLU rep nodded once, slow and deliberate. Maya stepped back from the podium, not smiling, just breathing. She had said what she came to say, and nothing, not sabotage, not whispers, not corrupted files, could take it back. That evening, a clip of Maya's speech began circulating on a student-run TikTok page. Within an hour, it had 8,000 views. By midnight, 28,000. By morning, 110,000. The comments flooded in. "Who is this girl?" "Yale needs more of her." "Where do I sign up to support the Human Code Doctrine?" Maya didn't post it. She didn't have to. The world had found her voice, and this time it refused to look away. The next day, she received a sealed envelope under her dorm door. No return address, just one word on the outside: decision. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside, "Congratulations. You have been selected as Yale's delegate to the Global Youth Policy Forum in Geneva. Your voice, your story, your code. Let's change the system together." At the bottom, a signature, Eleanor Grant. For the first time in weeks, Maya sat on the steps of the law library and cried. Not because she won, but because she refused to be erased, and the world finally listened. The first time Maya saw the United Nations building in Geneva, She almost laughed. Not because it wasn't impressive. It was. Towering flags, marble halls, translators buzzing like bees in headsets, but because it looked exactly like what she'd imagined as a kid when she used to give pretend speeches in her room, using a hairbrush as a microphone and her reflection as the audience. Now she was here, not pretending, not dreaming, presenting. Representing Yale, representing New Orleans, representing everyone who had ever been told they were lucky to be invited. The Global Youth Policy Forum was intense. Delegates from 52 countries, each with a signature proposal, each trying to shape the future. Most came from polished prep academies and international boarding schools, fluent in 3 languages, trained in diplomacy since childhood. And then there was Maya. One battered notebook, one voice, one unshakable memory of what it took to even be allowed in the room. Day 1. Introductions. Each delegate was given 60 seconds to pitch their policy. Maya's turn came last, again. She walked up, cleared her throat, and said, "In the U.S., algorithms are deciding who gets hired, who gets parole, who gets home loans. But we don't know who programmed them, or what bias they were trained on. My name is Maya Bellamy, and I'm here to propose the Human Code Doctrine, because code should serve the people, not silence them." Several delegates exchanged glances, some impressed, some skeptical. One delegate from Germany raised her hand, breaking protocol. "But isn't that just American paranoia?" Maya didn't blink. Number its reality, and it's spreading. By day 3, the committee sessions began. Here's where things got hard. Maya's proposal had gained traction with advocacy groups and human rights delegates, but it was facing heavy resistance from the corporate-aligned bloc, led by a slick-talking delegate from Switzerland named Julian. Julian was charming, clever, and absolutely committed to burying Maya's doctrine under market feasibility concerns. "Transparency sounds noble," he said in one session, "but we must protect innovation. Can you name one major tech firm that would voluntarily submit to your proposal?" Maya leaned forward. "Number? Because they've never been asked to." The room stirred. Julian smirked. "Idealism is easy when you're not in charge of growth." Maya met his eyes. "And compromise is easy when you're not the one being erased." The silence that followed was deafening, but the pushback didn't stop. That night, Maya found a new email in her forum inbox. Subject: Advisory. Reconsider sponsorship strategy. A senior delegate has raised concerns about the divisive tone of your proposal. We recommend adjusting your language to be more commercially appealing if you hope to be included in the final Geneva resolution. In other words, soften the truth or get left out. Maya stared at the screen for a long time. She could change a few words, round the edges, talk about collaboration and shared responsibility instead of injustice and erasure. It would make everything easier. But then, she remembered sitting in the basement of Yale, writing until her hands went numb. She remembered her mom's text, "You never needed their permission to shine." And she made her choice. The next day, in the open session, each delegate was allowed to propose one amendment for inclusion in the Geneva Youth Resolution, an international document that would be presented to the UN General Assembly Advisory Board. Maya stepped to the mic. "I propose that any global regulation of artificial intelligence include a public right-to-review clause, a requirement that algorithms used in public decision-making be subject to citizen oversight panels and data transparency." Murmurs. Some gasps. One moderator leaned to whisper to another. Julian rolled his eyes, but Maya stood tall. "Because the future isn't just about innovation. It's about who survives it. 2 hours later, the amendment vote began. Each delegate received one ballot. When the results were announced, Maya's amendment passed by a single vote. The Human Code Doctrine was now part of the final document, not just an idea, policy. That night, Maya stood on the balcony of her Geneva dorm, overlooking Lake Leman, as the wind whipped her curls against her face. She had come to represent herself, but now she was carrying voices bigger than her own. The girl who had once been dragged off a stage before her first debate round at Yale was now helping shape international policy, and something deep inside her shifted. She was no longer just fighting to belong. She was building a world where others wouldn't have to. When Maya stepped off the plane back in New Haven, she was a different person. Geneva had changed everything. She wasn't just the girl who survived sabotage anymore. She was now the girl who rewrote policy, a name cited in international forums, a voice quoted in think pieces, a delegate whose amendment had passed with the slimmest of margins and the heaviest of implications. But the moment she walked back onto Yale's campus, she could feel it. The shift. Not celebration, not recognition. Tension. It started small. An email from the honors office. We'd like to schedule a meeting regarding your future participation in external speaking engagements. Please refrain from citing your status as a Yale affiliate until this review is complete. Then, a faculty advisor pulled her aside. Some donors are uncomfortable with the language in your Geneva Amendment. Just be careful. And then the whispers returned. But this time, they weren't about whether she belonged. They were about whether she was a problem. She tried to brush it off, focused on classes, reconnected with Kamal, Leah, and Sadie. But even her own team seemed shaken. One afternoon, Leah hesitated before speaking. "Maya, they're saying you embarrassed the university." Maya blinked. For getting an amendment passed? For calling out the systems were still inside. Then came the email that changed everything. Subject: Ethics Panel Review. Amendment Conduct Inquiry. A committee has been formed to investigate whether your Geneva proposal violated university protocol on policy endorsement without institutional review. Maya stared at the screen. Her breath caught. It wasn't just bureaucratic noise. It was a message. Stay in your place. She forwarded it to Professor Grant. Minutes later, her phone rang. Grant didn't greet her. She just said, "They're trying to erase you again." That night, Maya met Grant in her office. No lights, just the soft glow of a desk lamp and a steaming mug of coffee. "You know what this is," Grant said. "They couldn't stop you from going to Geneva. They couldn't stop your policy from passing, but now they're going to try to turn you into a liability." Maya nodded slowly. "Because I didn't wait for permission." "Exactly." There was a long pause. Then Maya asked the question she'd been holding in since Geneva. "Was I wrong to go that far?" Grant turned. "You weren't wrong. You were loud, and loud black women make institutions uncomfortable." Maya swallowed hard. Grant leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You're not just a student anymore. You're a precedent, and that scares them." The next week, Maya was summoned to a closed-door review hearing. 5 older men, 1 HR representative, a note-taker. They never said the word discipline, but they said optics. They said representational boundaries. They said misalignment with institutional tone. At one point, one panelist actually asked, "Do you regret making Yale the centerpiece of such a disruptive global conversation?" Maya stared at him for a long moment, then said, "No. I regret how long it took for someone like me to get the mic." Silence. Someone coughed. The note-taker kept scribbling. That night, back in her dorm, Maya sat in bed staring at the ceiling. For the first time in months, she felt tired. Not just physically, existentially. How many rooms would she have to earn her way into? How many battles would she have to fight just to keep standing where others were born to sit? Her phone buzzed. It was a news alert. UN to consider youth amendment on algorithm oversight. Maya Bellamy credited as originator. And below that, a comment already going viral. She's not a problem, she's the proof. Maya closed her eyes, let the silence wrap around her. They wanted to break her momentum. But what they didn't know, she was no longer climbing their ladder. She was building her own staircase, and she wasn't climbing it alone. Weeks passed. The hearing ended in silence. No official reprimand, no public statement. Just a quiet email from the administration. We thank you for your cooperation. Please remember to route all future speaking engagements through the Office of Public Affairs. A non-apology, a bureaucratic leash. But Maya wasn't surprised. She'd learned something at Yale. Power never admits it lost. It just tries to control the next move. And yet, something had changed, not in the halls of Yale, but beyond them. Because Geneva had started a chain reaction. Within a month, 3 student coalitions at other universities contacted Maya, asking for permission to adopt parts of the Human Code Doctrine into their own policy proposals. By spring, a city council in Oakland, California, passed a local ordinance inspired by Maya's Transparency Clause. And then, 2 months later, came the email that would rewrite everything. From United Nations Office for Digital Ethics. Subject, Advisory Council Nomination. We are pleased to inform you that Maya Bellamy has been nominated as a Youth Policy Fellow for the UN's 2026 Digital Governance Committee. Maya sat motionless. Then read the line again. Not a speaker, not a visitor, a policymaker. The next time she stepped onto Yale's campus, it wasn't for class, it was to speak. The university, after months of ignoring her, finally asked Maya to give a keynote at their Ethics in Emerging Technology Symposium. Not because they wanted to, but because now they had to. The pressure was too public, the momentum too real, the silence too damning. So they gave her the mic, and Maya took it. The auditorium was full of familiar faces, students, professors, Dean Strauss, even Priya, seated near the back with folded arms. Maya stood at the podium, looking down at her handwritten speech. Then she folded the paper in half and slid it away. When I came to Yale, she began, I thought the hardest part would be proving I was smart enough to be here. She paused. It wasn't. The hardest part was surviving a place that didn't want to admit I already belonged. The audience shifted. Some leaned forward, others froze. I was lied to, sabotaged, told I was too loud, too disruptive, naisahakahak, and too ambitious. And yet, I'm still here, still rising, still building. She looked directly at the administration table. You don't get to erase what you're afraid to name. You don't get to silence the voice you can't control. And you definitely don't get to decide what I become next. A beat of silence, then a slow clap, then another. Then the room erupted. Not polite applause, a standing ovation. Even some professors stood, quietly, uncomfortably, but truthfully. And Maya, she didn't cry. She smiled. That night, she walked across campus alone, the twilight wrapping around her shoulders like armor. She stopped at the steps outside the old debate hall, where this all began, where Gregory had mocked her, where she stood with trembling fingers and no one listening. Now, the Yale archives had requested a copy of her Geneva proposal for permanent inclusion, her name, was going to live in those halls. Not whispered. Etched. Back in New Orleans, her mom sat on the porch holding the university's official press release. She read the headline out loud, her voice cracking. From scholarship student to global voice, Maya Bellamy rewrites the rules of belonging at Yale. Then she looked up at the sky and whispered, "Told you, baby, they were never ready for you." And dear viewer, if you've come this far, if this story stirred something in you, if you've ever been underestimated, doubted, or told to be quiet, then let Maya's story remind you, you don't rise by asking permission. You rise by refusing to disappear. Drop a comment below and tell us, what moment in your life proved you were never the underdog? Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what we share next. Because the world isn't changed by those who follow the script. It's changed by those who rewrite it.